In this video, we're going to create a main title and a lower third using Title Studio, part of Boris FX's Continuum, all inside of Avid Media Composer. Let's hop right in. You may have seen Title Studio and think that it is a 3D titling and motion graphic application, but it does way more than that, including the creation of basic titles like main titles and lower thirds, which we're going to learn how to make in this video. I'm here inside my Avid Media Composer sequence where I have a clip. I'd like to add a main title sidebar and composite it over the image. First off, I'm going to press Command Y to create a new track, make sure I'm monitoring that new track, and also just move my playhead to the 10-second mark where I'll create an add edit. In order to find Title Studio, head to your effect palette, and just so that you can see this, I'm here in my BCC 3D Objects category where there's BCC Title Studio. I'll drag it here onto the filler track, and we can now see it over our image. Let's reveal its effect controls. We can see here the effects editor and the controls that we have available to us in Media Composer, but we have additional control when we first of all show the effects browser. Now this is a gateway to all of the templates that you have available to you inside of Title Studio. When you take a look at all of these subcategories, just note that there's quite a bit for you to view, including lower thirds, which is currently selected. And you can always select a lower third and then simply press the play button in order to give this a preview. Now, if you are not seeing your video for any reason, just keep in mind in the preview panel to composite over the background versus the default over black or over checkboard. Other categories to check also include infographics, callouts, and once again, just select any that you want, followed by the play button to get a sense for how it's designed and animated. And last but not least, we'll head to sidebars. In this particular case, I'm just going to select the basic sidebar by clicking on it. And as we can see, just below the preview panel, we have the option of just switching the text. So I'm going to do that. First of all, in my text 2, I'm going to call this Getting Real. And just above that, where it says text 1, I'm going to call this episode 10. Let's add a few points here in the various text fields from important point 1 to important point 4. I'll just start typing some random ones. New Year's resolutions, winter vacation, meditation, and last, I'm just going to scroll down to text number 6 and type in Burning Man. Now you may not see any changes update just yet, and that's because if we scroll up here in the text panel and just click on Insert Text, that will then update so you can get a clear preview for how this is going to look. Finally, let's go to the final text 7 field where there's some lorem ipsum text. I'm just going to type in 2023 copyright period this podcast studio. And once again, scroll to the top and insert the text so I can see that this updates. Now that we're happy with this text, let's apply this and just see that this all carries on over into Avid Media Composer. And the best part is, as I scrub over my timeline, the in and out animations start at the beginning of the filler and where I created that add edit. Now let's just say that we need to make some more complicated changes to the template. By heading back to the effect editor, at any time we can launch the Title Studio UI, which is where we can get into advanced workflows. A couple things about my setup. I have the composite window up here at the top, not to mention it's set to a single mode. And if you click on this little icon here, I'm compositing over video. If I move my playhead further into the timeline, that's where we can see the text. And just below that is an example of how this text is built. So every single template is well designed, where we can find out the text to edit and then the components of the graphics that are put inside this package. In this instance, I just want to do a really simple change. So I'll click the disclosure triangle next to the text to edit, and I'll select the episode 10 text, where there is the episode 10 texture layer. And just behind the timeline is your controls, where we could start to make some changes to this text, including I will bring in the tracking, and we could even do some stylistic changes here as well. If I go to the timeline and then just select the episode 10 container that the texture is in and go back to controls, is where I'm going to find position and scale values for anything that is inside that element. I'll just move this a little bit up. I'll head back to the timeline again, and let's go to the important point 1. The important point could use some changing, so I'll open that up and select the texture and then click on that Controls tab, where I'm just going to bring in the tracking a bit so it's not so placed up against the border. Title Studio goes a lot further than this in terms of being able to animate each of these components and elements, and I suggest that you check out John Dickinson's series to find out more about that. Now that I've done the changes that I want to, I'll simply apply this. We can see here that that updates, and I'm able to see this inside my timeline. And let's just go to the beginning of the timeline to play this back. Excellent. I'm here inside of a new sequence, and I'd like to add a 6-second lower third over this subject. I've already created an additional track above that clip and also made an incision here with an add edit on the filler. I'll just move this video over to the side where I'll go back to the effects palette, into the BCC 3D objects category, and then select Title Studio to place on the filler and just close this window out altogether. We see Title Studio, and like we've done before, we'll show the effects browser. This time I'm going to go to the lower thirds category, and we can see we have a lot of lower thirds to choose from. I'm going to scroll down until I find this basic title credit orange. I'm going to select it and then just press the play button here inside my text panel. I'd like to audition one more text, which is the blind reveal orange, which has a line elements as part of the text template. I'll rewind the project and then just play through. And I would like to use this, but then make a few changes stylistically. I'm going to stop playback, and where it says Boris effects, let's give this person a name, Samantha Smith, and under the text 2 element, we'll type in the word writer. Once again, I'll click on Insert Text to see this update, and I do need to make some spacing changes and some color changes to this overall text template. In the last exercise, we actually went back to Avid Media Composer and then launched the Title Studio UI from there, but you should know inside the effects browser, there's an advanced mode. Once you click on this, I'll first of all move later here in time, and we should note that if you click on an element of your title inside the composite window, we are able to reposition this by simply dragging on the arrows. Your red arrow represents X, green Y, and blue is going to allow you to move it back in space, or what is known as Z space. In this case, our changes actually revolve style changes. So I'll open up the text to edit category, select the texture in the Samantha Smith container, head to the controls and minimize a bit of the tracking of the text to fit this a bit better. Head back to the timeline. We'll select the Samantha Smith container, and under the controls there, reposition the text, or just use these handy arrows that we have on screen. Heading back to the timeline, I'll close out Samantha Smith and then head to the writer, where in selecting this writer this time, I'm going to head to text styles, where we can choose from a number of different colors for our text to be. You should note that what shows down here is a very small portion of what's available. In fact, if I go to this drop-down menu, you have a few different options here of styles that you can choose from. Not to mention, in addition, we could go to the Gradient Styles tab and choose from styles there by simply double-clicking to decorate our text with. If you're unhappy with the simple radials category, feel free to explore bright colors, a little bit easier gradients, and I'll just choose orange. Excellent. I'll head over to controls and just increase the tracking of that text even further to spread it out there on the lower line. By the way, in the timeline, the element, which happens to be the line, can also be changed by simply selecting that texture rectangle, and then we could also give this a red-orange style instead if we wanted a little bit of color variation. At the end, we can do our final previewing here for our title, and then from the timeline, simply apply this to go back into Avid Media Composer. So hopefully this gives you some ideas of how fluent and easy it is to work with Title Studio for creating very simple text inside of Avid Media Composer. For more information on using this effect, check out the Boris Effects channel and John Dickinson's in-depth training series.